Hello, I'm Tom Wilkinson, and welcome to the Thinking in English podcast, a podcast aimed at intermediate to advanced level English learners. Everyone has binge-watched a TV show. Only a few weeks ago, I watched the whole Netflix show, The Queen's Gambit, in only 3 days. However, is binge-watching actually bad for you? In this episode, we will look at what binge-watching is, and then think about the benefits and consequences of doing it. Hopefully, by the end of the episode, you will be able to express your own opinion on the topic. But first, why not follow the Thinking in English Instagram page, Thinking in English podcast, or the link is in the description. And you definitely should look at our blog, thinkinginenglish.blog, for all transcripts and bonus content. Here is today's vocabulary list. As always, the written list is available in the description of the podcast and also on our blog, thinkinginenglish.blog. Sitting. Sitting. A sitting is a limited period of time during which you sit and do a particular activity. For example, I read that book in one sitting. Cliffhanger. Cliffhanger. A cliffhanger is a story or situation that is exciting because its ending or result is uncertain until it happens. For example, many of Hitchcock's films are real cliffhangers. To indulge. To indulge. To allow yourself or another person to have something enjoyable, especially more than is good for you. For example, I love champagne, but I don't often indulge myself. To admit. To admit. To agree that something is true, especially unwillingly. For example, she admitted making a mistake. Perspective. Perspective. A perspective is a particular way of considering something. For example, her attitude lends a fresh perspective to the subject. Beneficial. Beneficial. Helpful, useful, or good. For example, a stay in the countryside will be beneficial to his health. Excessive. Excessive. Too much. For example, excessive exercise can sometimes cause health problems. Insomnia. Insomnia. Insomnia is a condition where you are unable to sleep over a period of time. For example, she suffered from insomnia caused by stress at work. And finally, fulfilling. Fulfilling. Making you feel happy and satisfied. Nursing is hard work, but it can be very fulfilling. On today's episode of Thinking in English, I want to introduce another debate over a controversial issue. If you go back through some earlier episodes, I have made similar style episodes on assisted suicide and free university education. Definitely check them out if you haven't already. By highlighting a topic, asking you a question, and introducing two different perspectives, my aim is to make you think and form an opinion. Instead of just listening to this podcast, I want you to consider everything I say and the arguments I make, and then decide for yourself how to answer the question. Instead of just listening to English, I want you to try and use English and think in English. So, what is the question for today's episode? While past episodes have been quite serious, this time I decided it would be a little less serious. So this episode's question is binge watching bad for you? Before I present you with some arguments, let me first offer some background information. What is binge watching? Well, binge watching is when you watch multiple episodes of a TV show in one sitting. Traditionally, TV shows would release their episodes gradually, and the audience would need to wait days or even weeks between each episode. I remember watching exciting TV shows on Saturday and Sunday nights, which would often end on a cliffhanger. It was so frustrating having to wait a whole week before I could watch the next one. The internet and streaming services have completely changed the way we watch TV and movies. Binge watching shows gained popularity around the year 2012, and especially after Netflix's 2013 decision to release all 13 episodes in the first season of House of Cards at one time, instead of posting an episode per week. Although binge watching is a relatively new concept, the verb to binge has been around for much longer. To binge means to indulge in an activity to excess, especially eating, drinking, or taking drugs. Binge eating and binge drinking are also common terms. I've talked before on this podcast about dictionaries' words of the year. Well, in 2015, binge watch was declared the word of the year by Collins English Dictionary, which said the term had increased 200% in the previous year. In fact, 73% of Americans admit to binge watching, with the average binge lasting 3 hours and 8 minutes. The coronavirus pandemic has also led to a surge in binge watching around the world, as more people are spending more time at home. Despite this, is binge watching bad for you? Does it have any impact on your medical or physical health? The rest of this episode will present different perspectives on binge watching. On the one hand, some people argue that binge watching can help you make beneficial social connections. Binging can create a community around shows. Think about how popular Game of Thrones, Breaking Bad, or Tiger King have been in recent years. Millions of people watched the same show incredibly quickly, and social media was full of references to such shows. This allows you to discuss and enjoy the show with large numbers of people, both in the real life and online, and it can make it easier to relate to other people. Romantic relationships can also be strengthened by binge watching together because it serves as a fun activity that creates a shared interest and offers an easy way to spend time together. On the other hand, it has been suggested that binge watching could lead to mental health issues. For instance, a University of Texas study found that binge watchers were more likely to be depressed, lonely, and have less self-control. For some people, excessive TV watching is associated with regret, guilt, and feelings of failure because of a sense of wasted time. I'm sure you have experienced something like this before. Once you get really involved in a TV show and watch it for long periods of time, you can feel strange when you finally finish the show. I watched The Queen's Gambit on Netflix last month, and after finishing it, I felt slightly depressed or anxious and empty. It was something that I had done every day for those 3 days, but now it was not there anymore. I had nothing to do. In addition, binge watching can cause serious physical health problems. Sitting down for long periods of time can lead to a number of health conditions, including heart disease and blood clots. This has been known for many years. People who work in offices, for example, are advised to get up and walk around every hour or two. People often eat junk food and drink sugary drinks while binge watching a show. I know I do. Watching a TV show while eating potato chips is great, but unhealthy. Furthermore, one study found that binge watching was related to poorer sleep quality, more fatigue, and insomnia. Despite this, there are actually some health benefits that come from binge watching. Most notably, stress relief. According to psychiatrists, binge watching releases a chemical in the brain, which creates a feeling of pleasure and can help people to relax and relieve stress. There are lots of stressful things in our lives: work, money, family, politics. Binge watching can stop you from thinking about these issues and allows you to relax. So, we've looked at the health pros and cons of binge watching. However, does binge watching a show make it more fulfilling? Some people say yes, it does make shows more fulfilling. While binge watching, the viewer can feel the pleasure of full immersion, which is a great feeling similar to staying up all night to finish a book or a project. Watching several episodes at once tends to make the story easier to follow and more enjoyable than a single episode. Shows that have multiple different storylines, complex relationships, and interesting characters are much easier to understand if you binge watch the episodes. If you have to wait a week or so until the next episode, maybe you would forget some of the smaller details. In contrast, a study found that people who watched multiple episodes of a show in one sitting reported significantly less show enjoyment than people who watched one episode at a time. Perhaps this is because waiting for the next episode builds excitement. Sherlock, a famous British TV show, ended one of its series on a major cliffhanger. It was so shocking that everyone was talking about the episode and trying to solve the puzzle. My friends, my teachers at school, newspapers, and even the TV news were all talking about it for weeks. However, people who binge watched the show on Netflix missed out on that experience. They only had to wait 30 seconds to find out what happened, whereas I had to wait over a year. So here is today's final thought. On today's episode, we have looked at the concept of binge watching. More specifically, is binge watching good for you or bad for you? On the one hand, some people argue that binge watching is negative because it has physical and mental health consequences and can make TV shows less fulfilling. On the other hand, others argue that binging can help you make relationships, relieve stress, and enjoy shows more. I'm not sure what I think about this question. For me, I do enjoy watching lots of episodes one after another. However, I think it's made it more difficult for me to enjoy normal television because I don't want to wait really for the next episode. If it won't be immediately after, maybe I won't watch it. What do you think? What is your opinion on binge watching? Do you prefer watching several episodes of a new show at one time, or one episode per week? What other pros and cons for binge watching can you list? Which side do you find more convincing? Thank you for listening to today's episode of Thinking in English. Please share with your friends, check out our social media links in the description, and send us a message. We really appreciate all of your feedback. And if you have any ideas for topics or future podcast guests or any other learning format, please let us know. And please leave me a rating. We're now on Instagram, I'm sure you've already seen it, but go there, check it out. Lots of good content about vocabulary, pronunciation, and grammar. And Instagram is a great way to contact me. It's Thinking in English Podcast on Instagram, or the link is in the description. Also, all of the transcripts of the podcast are now available on the Thinking in English blog. Vocabulary list, comprehension questions, and all of the articles are there for you to read. That link is also in the description, so please check it out too. Thank you, and see you next time.